This is an Irish independent podcast.
As FA Cup third rounds go, if shocks are your thing, if that is the magic that you crave, then the 2025 edition did not quite catch fire. Credit to Spurs, though. They did their best against non-league Tamworth. The weekend did meander its way to a crescendo yesterday. 10-man Manchester United threw on penalties away to Arsenal. Mikel Arteta disbelieving, furious, 25 shots to Manchester United 7. It's just not fair, he almost said. We'll talk to Gary Breen in due course. Ronan.
Hi, Joe.
And Colin Doherty in the house.
Hello, Joe.
So a bit of a non-event first half. We'll get, by the way, to different things. Kyle Walker, to Pep Guardiola's intervention, to Ryan Giggs back in a dugout, back on Broadway again, talking to the media again. The fragmentation of football on TV laid bare over the last decade in a report, and Super Cup madness in Saudi Arabia before getting to Gary. But non-event first half, United, as is their want now, 5-4-1 team, sitting in Arsenal, lots of possession, and then caught fire second half. Bruno Fernandes goal, really good goal. Diogo Dalot, second yellow on 61, Gabriel goal on 63, and you thought, well, surely Arsenal will kick on, but they didn't. Declan Rice. Havertz, I suppose, is the fall guy, missing chances, and Mikel Arteta increasingly frustrated.
Yes, unbelievable. Obviously, you measure the performance and what we did in relation to the position. You know, you deserve to win the game by a mile, but the reality is that that we are out, and the only thing that's going to be judged is that. But internally, I can't. I love my players. I love our team, and I love how good they are and what they do. Because from 1,000 games, you should lose one, and probably was this one.
Why do you think those chances aren't being finished off by your team at the moment?
I don't know, because you are 1 yard of goal, but not a penalty. You know, you don't generate a clearer opportunity than that one, because it's football, and errors are part of that execution. Credit to the goalkeeper as well. That was probably the best player.
If you spotted, by the way, the Irish brogue, that was Sarah Mulkerns, you'll know from the BBC's GA coverage, asking the questions on BBC One yesterday. I guess for guidance on this, Robbie Lyle talking to Yardman gets things moving.
So what do you think they need to do this transfer window?
Sack Mikel Arteta. If he sack him, don't buy a player and sack Mikel, I'm happy. Can you defend him now? Go on, I'm overreacting. Go on. Go on. Defend him. Defend him. No. Defend him.
Okay.
Defend him.
Well, like you said, he didn't take the penalty.
No.
You know what I mean, right?
Defend
what I would, right?
Last week you tell me. No. Last week you said, oh, Yardman, this is the first game we lose at the Emirates.
Yeah, no, it's the second.
Okay.
It's the second game we've lost at the Emirates. Well, what I'm saying...
We lose two crucial games. 2 cup competition. Mm-hmm. This manager is deluded.
I don't agree with you that we should sack the manager. No, you're asking me.
Keep him then.
Right?
No. You love Mikel Arteta over your club.
I don't love Mikel Arteta.
Yes, you do. No, do you love Arsenal? All right. Listen, I can.
I've seen. Listen,
let me ask you a question. You have seen with your 2 eyes live. You have seen Arsenal win a Premier League title, yeah? You have seen them licking.
Many.
I have never seen it before.
Well, I've seen a few.
Thank you very much. So for people like you who see it, should know better.
Well, maybe we have a bit more experience and we understand that you don't win every single game.
Gotcha there, wasn't it?
Personal.
That was gotcha journalism from Robbie at the end there, wasn't it?
Yardman has spoken. It is a welcome return to form for Arsenal Fan TV.
Yeah.
Too quiet in my life over the last couple of years, but back with a vengeance now.
Yeah, and Yardman actually grabbing the microphone and turning it away from himself back to Robbie and said, no, you speak now. You've dug your own grave, Robbie. Let's hear what you've had to say.
I love when someone says, tell me, and then they continue to talk. Don't give the person a chance to tell them.
What percentage of Arsenal fans do we feel Yardman is speaking for here? Now, the groans in the background when he announced that the transfer he wanted this January was Mikel Arteta sacked would suggest nobody was cheering that on.
Yeah.
So I think he's still in a small minority.
I'm going to guess 15% of people who are proud to agree with Yardman, and maybe another 12 to 15 that are like...
In the privacy of the ballot box.
I'm happy that Yardman said
What percentage don't know us?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, like, obviously, their problem is fairly obvious in that they're not scoring goals from play. 1.8 down to 1.3. High point of 1.8 under Arteta, now down to 1.3. The injuries haven't helped. Saka, Odegaard. I'd be inclined to say this is a tricky spell for Arteta and actually spending money over the summer if they can't do it quite now to get in. A striker who can take chances will fix a lot of their ills. I know they're methodical under Arteta and there's a defence first aspect to how he sees things. I'm not sure he's wrong in that though. Yeah. I'm with Robbie. That's what I'm trying to say.
You love Mikel Arteta more than your club. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
I was watching that game. And you know, when you have this moment, I know there's so much money in football, but you know, Arsenal spent a lot of money, and then you're looking at Jesus, Martinelli, Havertz up front. It's like, it's fine, but like, how do clubs? And it's not just Arsenal, but how do clubs spend so much money on it? And this is what they come away with so often, where it's just lacking a lot. And I know Saka's missing, and that's a big part of it. But I also think that would have been something that was levelled at them, say last season and the season before. It's like, geez, you got a good run there with no injuries, and that's not always going to happen. And it did always feel like that they weren't really set up for any injuries, and that's why we're maybe hearing about it more so now. That like other teams have as bad injury crisis or worse, but Arsenal just aren't as set up to deal with it in those positions.
Yeah,
I have no sympathy for them. I have to say, like, they seem hamstrung in the forward positions, as Colin's saying there, but it's come and it's been disclosed in media in the last couple of years that Arteta is not just a head coach. Like, he's got fingerprints in everything, and he has veto and sign off on signings, and they've backloaded their team. Like, he signed Calafiori in the summer, who wasn't like a necessary addition when you think about it. They got rid of Granit Xhaka, who was like actually playing really good stuff for Arsenal in the back end of his Arsenal tenure. Went and won the league with Bayer Leverkusen. Ironically, would be unbelievable in this uber physical Arsenal team. And they brought in Kai Havertz, and it was almost like Arteta thinking, he hasn't really flourished at Chelsea, but I'm going to be the one to unlock Kai Havertz, and he's going to be a number 8 for us. And look where he's ended up. Like, the poor chap is playing number 9 in what is a title aspiring team, and he's just not cut out for it. And he's a good footballer, but he's not what they're asking him to be.
Did you see Domino's yesterday?
No.
Domino's UK tweeted, I had to double check this was the real Domino's account. Hey, the cheek of them.
Yeah.
Think, has Domino's offered you a perfect service throughout your life?
No.
Has it been textbook on every occasion?
It has not.
Piping hot, beautiful delivery. So Domino's, I mean, throwing the first stone, weirdly tweeted a picture of Kai Havertz and said, sorry if we missed any orders tonight, we just had this guy start. Oh. So I'm sure their marketing person thought this will go down a treat, will go viral.
But like, you take...
Maybe they did because I mentioned it. I regret that. Do we beep it? No, leave it in. Leave it in.
If I was working in Domino's and I'd be cutting that out and putting it to my boss, then look at this, they're talking about it in Ireland now.
Yeah, not all publicity, etc.
But in terms of signings, like Mikel Merino as well,
yeah.
And like, it's data-driven ethos at Arsenal, which is the way to go. It's modern football. I'm not hammering them for that. And they looked at this guy who won more aerial duels than anybody in La Liga last year. So they're hammering the hammer. Like, they're like, we're unbelievable at set pieces. But if set pieces don't work, then... Because I was at the corresponding fixture a few weeks ago in the Premier League, and it was like United were broken characters. Like, they were dominated at set pieces. They actually played all right in the game.
Yeah.
But Arsenal threatened. They must have had double digits corners, and every single one of them could have been a goal. I'm not exaggerating.
No, I remember it well.
Whereas yesterday it was like United came in, and it speaks to Amorim, who said, give me some time in the training ground, and like, they were pretty solid from set pieces yesterday.
He did highlight their more aggression, their more aggression on their part at set pieces. We'll talk to Gary Breen about this game in a bit more detail, and about Arteta and just where he stands. Is Gary Breen a Robbie Lyle type or a Yardman type, is I guess what we're trying to...
I've really been dying for someone to ask him that question.
I think there's also an aspect to Arteta whereby he's not well liked. You know, he's not an especially endearing character, and sometimes post-match, be it we would have won that game, 999 times out of 1,000, to paraphrase him, or there's something wrong with the ball in the League Cup. Or even, I do remember earlier this season against Bournemouth, he said it was an impossible task to win with 10 men. There's kind of a woe is me, woe is us demeanour to him. I mean, no mention of the fact they were gifted a penalty yesterday. And VAR couldn't intervene. So I think that aspect goes against him as well.
Howard Webb must have been looking at that yesterday thinking, has there ever been a better advertisement for VAR than Andy Maddening, if you ask me, Joe?
Meanwhile, the redemption of Harry Maguire is, I think, officially complete. Don't point. We got it.
He got it.
He laughed at it.
The redemption of
you
Harry
were trying to move swiftly on.
Maguire is complete with De Ligt and Martinez either side of him. Harry Maguire enjoying life. I'm very happy for Harry Maguire. There was a time very recently where he was a figure of complete ridicule. Roy Keane was impersonating his interviews live on TV. sorry to fans. And it looked like he was finished. And they wanted him out of the club and he said, no, I'll stay. And now here he is anchoring that defence.
This is the most endearing thing about Ruben Amorim's Man United and not Harry Maguire. Because Harry Maguire's always been, whatever everybody's form and stuff, he's always been good in the air and very strong. So you put a structure around him, Harry Maguire is going to be very good. That's why he's been good for England. He's not going to be beaten in those duels, those physical duels. But the fact that you mentioned at the top of the show, United went 5-4-1, sit in, that's what they do. And Amorim's come at a time where it's like, yeah, good for them. Good for them going to Arsenal, setting up of a solid structure. Solskjaer was doing it, and people liked it, but it was too early. They were getting a lot of criticism. It was like, this is so reductive. This is basic.
They're now so beaten down, they will accept it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it going, that's the right thing to do. Fair play.
Can you imagine Harry Maguire? What are we doing on the weekend, boss? Well, we're going 5-4-1 and you have pace either side of you. Okay. I'm okay with that. Yeah. Joshua Zirkzee. Fans have been trying to build bridges with him since the booing against Newcastle after 30 minutes. So against Liverpool away, they were singing his name continuously. And then yesterday, he gets his moment and shouted as well to Altay Bayindir, who I thought we would never see again after the Spurs game in the League Cup. So still no appearances in the league, but he was very good yesterday. I mean, that was the save of the Odegaard penalty at 1-1 was both crucial and very good save. Very good save.
Great save.
Yeah.
Joe, the man can't kick a football. It's actually unbelievable. It was like Mark Bosnich, who subsequent to his retirement was like, to be honest, I didn't know where the ball was going. And that was yesterday. He kicked it out of play. Again, I'm not great with numbers like Conan. Over 10 times straight out, like Ron O'Gara style touch finder. Like, I was like, what is... And then but he was brilliant in the actual goalkeeping part.
Brilliant in goalkeeping. Bosnich couldn't kick the ball past the halfway line. By his own admission. Yeah. It's quite a strange thing.
Just on the Maguire thing quickly, like...
Yes.
All that ails Harry Maguire has not improved overnight. Like, if you leave him exposed down the channel, he's going to get done in the way he has done. Like, that's the thing. He made the step up from England duty where he was playing the back five that Conan's talking about. He was consolidated in that. Leicester, low block, blah, blah, blah. Came to Man United, he was the captain. He's supposed to stand on ceremony like Virgil van Dijk and back himself in 1v1s. It's just not going to happen. So it's like we're just seeing the best of Harry Maguire in what he does best.
Does it also warm your heart?
Look, I don't want to draw... Is it too clunky of a correlation with the Marcus Rashford situation where Marcus Rashford has essentially taken a lot of... And I'm speaking strictly about the football side of things because it's not lost on me that there's a systemic agenda against Marcus Rashford since what he did during lockdown with the free meals for children.
What he did in a clarify it was a good thing.
What he did, it was a good thing. He took on
what that man did.
He took on the Tories, the cheek of him. So I think as we talked about this a few weeks ago, I think that has not been lost on certain columnists and media types in the UK.
Sure.
But I'm talking from a football standpoint where Team and Marcus Rashford Incorporated have gone, no, we're done with this club, and they've thrown their hat at the whole situation. And Harry Maguire, again, through the footballing prism, has taken umpteenth more abuse than Marcus Rashford. Like, he's been a laughingstock at Old Trafford and elsewhere. What always sticks in my mind is that anniversary game at Hampden Park where England beat Scotland, and he came on as a substitute, I think, and he was getting jeered by the Scotland fans and by the England fans, and like literally a figure of fun. And to bounce back in the way that you framed it there is actually so admirable, I think.
Yeah, I think he's made of the right stuff.
Yeah.
So there was a Manchester derby of sorts on BBC One. Man City 8, Salford 0, League 2 Salford 0. No Kyle Walker in the squad, and afterwards Pep Guardiola was asked why that might be.
He asked two years ago after travel. Bayern Munich, I think, want him, but the offer was not good enough. And I asked him, the club asked him how important it is. We cannot understand the success that we had these years without Kyle. It's impossible. But now in his mind is he would like to explore already, to go another country to play the last years for many reasons, and for that reason I prefer playing other players, like his mind is here, that's all.
You've always allowed players, when they come to you and ask to move, you've always...
Yeah, he went to the club, he went to Chiqui, didn't speak with me, but of course.
That's a shout.
Of course, always. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I that, but I'm pretty convinced that there is no one person in our jobs, whatever job, that doesn't want to be where they are, can perform or can, be exactly what want to be.
It's interesting you didn't go to Guardiola.
Was that a necessary detail from Guardiola to include, do you think?
I think that's not thrilled with that situation.
That's a not so veiled shot from Guardiola.
He has only started 9 games this season, so maybe the relationship isn't in a great place. The Telegraph say he's going to AC Milan. The Daily Mail say he's going to Inter Milan on loan. There is Saudi interest, although Sky Sports say he wants to stay in Europe. So looks like Serie A. I guess he had his Gary Neville at West Brom moment this season against Timo Werner. I mean, the writing's sort of on the wall this year, whereby he almost gave Timo Werner a bit of a yard outside him so he couldn't cut back inside him. And then he thought, now I've got you right where I want you. Here come the afterburners. Oh God, they're not here. You could almost see his life flashing before him. Adama Traore gave him a difficult time as well. So he's obviously, I would say he has sensed a couple of things. One, the top gear speed is gone. Now, the word seems to be he hasn't been able to train properly since the Euros. So maybe that affects things. Maybe he can get it back. He's still only 34. But at the moment, top speed is gone. Manchester United in free fall. Is he really going to be around for the rebuild? I'd say that has crossed his mind as well. And then it's hard to know this other aspect because his personal life has been feasted upon in the tabloids for several years now and he's stayed put. But maybe given the other two factors and the extent to which he's in, the Mail Online every 3 days, maybe he's just thinking, I just want to get out of here. And 300 grand a week will be taken care of in Serie A. Let's just do that. So, and not to paint him as a victim. I mean, I think much of this has been self-inflicted on the personal front. But I that's what I'm guessing is going on with Walker. Not really working on the pitch. I'm not likely to be around for the rebuild. I'm not loving being the centre of attention off the pitch. Yeah, let's just go. Yeah, I'm going to Tiki, not to Pep.
Because he tried not to be a shrinking violet on social media as well. I remember after a win they had a few weeks ago,
he fronted up,
and no, he was calling out people who were slagging him, and people were going a bit too far as well with their social media posts. Fair enough. But then I think he lost in all pile of games after that, and he went quiet again, and that just sort of fueled the fire. People were like, "Where are you now, Kyle? What's going on? Are you going to say anything about this performance?" And so, it's just attracting attention every which way now. Like obviously with everything else going on off the pitch, but I was wondering, it's sort of like the Harry Maguire thing. Is he just a victim of Man City have been terrible? He's not the only reason that they've been awful. And he's obviously he's 34 now, he's gotten a bit older and he's being exposed more because City are being exposed more.
I think he's not been exposed more. Well, maybe he has been exposed more, but I just think over the last 6, 7, 8, 9 years, expose me away. I'll be fine.
And I think you're right, Joe, because I dug into the numbers that Ronan's chatting about, the data-driven insights, and,
that got a Ronan Mullen whistle.
His bread and butter was always like that interception. Like Man City will play whatever way they want to play. If somebody tries to catch us on the break, it's fine. Kyle Walker's there. But he's only made 3 interceptions in the league this season, and I know he's played less games, but that's nearly 1 in every 4 matches. Per 90, and whereas he used to do generally 1 every 90, like one of those big interceptions, go back, get the ball, and away we go again. But if he's only doing that 1 in every 4 matches, and that's what he's there for, I mean, what are you there for, really? Like, I was looking at even his progressive carries up the pitch where he's receiving the pass, like they're all way down in what they used to be. So he's just not having that same sort of spark going forward. And then the most irritating thing I'd say if you're Pep Guardiola is that 49% of his long passes have been just cut out. Like that's just, if you're a manager, that's the sort of stuff that sticks in your mind there. Like, you don't even need the numbers to look at that. You're like, that's annoying. And generally they're always up above 70%,
Well, it just remains to be seen if he gets training again, does body sort itself out, or is he 34 and in rapid decline?
It was an amazing aura he had there for a while. where like you wouldn't think of taking him on the outside. It was incredible. And I'm just interested to see what latter day Kyle Walker looks like, because the all-time Premier League debate, he increasingly will appear in people's right back position as the best of the Premier League era.
Yeah.
And if you look at left back, it's almost always Ashley Cole. But they're very different fullbacks. You know, Ashley Cole had an Indian summer at left back, and you know, just a more polished player in possession, and you know, could tuck in. Whereas I think Walker was just, he had his assets and they will deteriorate with time. And I just wonder, like, if he goes to Serie A, could he play in a back three in a meaningful way and sit in there rather than marauding up and down the wing?
Pep Guardiola, after the game, staged an intervention. So, picture the scene. I'm sure you've all seen this, or most of you have. There are, is it 3 or 4?
I think there's 3 with one off camera. Maybe.
Yeah, young men surrounding him with an array of things to be signed. And he recognises these people. I've seen you before.
Don't come again. I want to tell you again. I know your faces. Yeah. Go to the school and prepare yourself, guys. You are age. You are young. You are old. Yes. You are young, guys. So don't be here. Waste your time. Okay. You want to live your life doing this? Or honestly? No. You want to do the rest of your life doing this? No.
I used to be a chef before.
Let's continue to do it. Prepare better. Prepare better. Fucking hell, man. This for the whole people. This is for you. What are your dreams? Tell me, what are your dreams? What are your dreams, my friend? Let's practice.
What are your dreams?
Their dreams were to meet Pep Guardiola.
To be a footballer, he said. That's a shitty reply. Well, honestly, give me a break, give me a chance. On fourth listen there, I realised the bloke who used to be a chef follows up with, I got bored.
This is way better, Pep.
We're in the 13th day of the year. That's going to take some topping as a clip. That was it's so good.
You can't underappreciate the extent to which, as they're saying, yeah, that they're holding out things to be signed. Yeah, I'll see you next Saturday.
Sign the shirt, Pep.
Hey, look, his heart's in the right place. His heart's in the right place.
Oh, I'm with Pep there. I part of me feels a bit sorry. Fair enough. That's how you want to spend your weekend. Fine, do that. You know, I used to pester Sean Marty Lockhart for all sorts of signatures on all sorts of memorabilia
to sell.
And if Sean Marty Lockhart had said to me, "Go away, get a life, you bum," that would have broke my heart.
What's the crack? So they sell these for money, obviously. But is the authorization required? Like, did they take a picture of Guardiola signing the item? And that's how it's validated for purchase, or
that might be why it's filmed.
But is there? Yeah, because otherwise you could just not condoning this, but like, well, who's to say like that Pep did or did not? So did they need a picture of Pep signing it and then put it in a box? And
that is an interesting. I've never gone online to buy any autograph or memorabilia, but maybe there is some proof required. Yeah. Then again, you could just get the one photo of Pep signing the one thing.
True.
Yeah. So is it this is a new career for the chef?
Yeah.
Oh, because that was funnier to me when it was like, I used to be a chef, but I was just enjoying this too much.
Oh no, because he said, Guardiola says, I know your faces.
Yeah.
This is not the first time you've got me to sign things. This is an industry that I'm supporting. And I don't want to be a part of it anymore.
Okay, I thought it was an intervention of like, you know, you can be doing so well.
It's doing something better with your time, you mean? No. This is their career.
He's saying this is not a good job.
Okay.
Getting me to sign things is not good for anyone here.
I was more with Pep before when I thought he was just being really sound. Like, you know, I know you want my autograph. I know you want to hang it up somewhere. I didn't realise they were fleecing these out online.
Yeah.
And the chef actually probably made a better career decision. Maybe he's getting way more money for this.
It's hard to know. What does a Pep Guardiola signed jersey look like go for?
Don't know. I have to look into that.
Someone will email in. We'll check that this week. We'll try and buy one. I want one from the chef. So that was Guardiola. In the other dugout was Ryan Giggs. This was on BBC One. He has been 4 years away from a dugout. The last time we saw Giggs in a dugout was late 2020 at Wembley when England beat Wales. And then shortly afterwards, Giggs was arrested on suspicion of assaulting his former girlfriend, Kate Greville. Giggs has always denied any wrongdoing, but you'll remember this hung over him right across 2021. It only went to trial in 22, so it was a long process. Eventually, he resigned. Initially, he stood down as Wales manager, missed the Euros in 21. Robert Page stepped in and then resigned and missed the World Cup in Qatar as well. So that was all very costly for him. The trial in 22, it laid bare his public life in fairly grisly detail. The accusations of a headbutt, of controlling behaviour, very much to the fore. Jury failed to reach a verdict. Alex Ferguson, you'll remember, was a character witness. I'd forgotten about all of that. Said he'd never seen Giggs lose his temper. Without doubt, the best example we had in the club. The best example. Everyone looked at Ryan as the number one and talked about his wonderful temperament. So jury couldn't reach a verdict. And then there was talk of a retrial. And at that point, very dramatically, Kate Greville said she didn't want to go through it again. She did not want to give evidence again. She felt worn down by the process, was the quote, and Giggs was therefore cleared. However, the court of public opinion has proved less straightforward. A barometer of that, I suppose, is the Premier League Hall of Fame, which started 3 years ago now, panel and public vote. You would think amongst the first inductees would be the man with 13 Premier League titles, 2 Champions Leagues, 4 FA Cups, 4 League Cups, PFA Player of the Year, record appearance holder, played until he was 40, etc. But he is not in the Premier League Hall of Fame. And he finds himself in limbo, albeit militant loyalty amongst his fellow members of the class of 92 means he's director of football at Salford. This wasn't formally announced, by the way, which is telling. There was no fanfare about the appointment of a Manchester United legend to director of football position. It was almost just pieces appeared saying it seems like Ryan Giggs is director of football last year. And since October, he's been in the dugout, not as manager, but he's been assisting the manager of the club. That's because Alex Bruce had to step away. So he's been helping out Carl Robinson, the manager. And he did media this week, was the interesting thing. So he spoke to The Athletic. He met with them in an office at the training ground. There was a degree of they tried to ask about the case and he wanted to touch on it in very minimal way. So, for instance, they asked him about the case. It was a difficult time for everyone, but my focus now is moving forward and at the moment enjoying being in the dugout and trying to get Salford up to League One. They ask a follow-up question. Like I said, I think it was a difficult time for everyone. But as we sit here now, my focus is on the here and now. Salford, looking forward to the future, not looking back. They went again and asked him if he has any thoughts on those who would be against him having a more prominent role at the club. Because in the build-up to the game, Women's Aid Charity, for instance, called his position at the club in the dugout as disheartening, given the nature of the allegations. So they asked him any thoughts on those who are uncertain or unhappy with Giggs having a prominent role. He said, I'm just concentrating on what I'm doing at present in this moment in time. And that, at a certain point, even The Athletic, so we can't keep asking you questions to get the same answer. And so they moved on to just generally how he finds himself. And he's talking about his role there. Director of football, money very tight at the club. Generally, Carl Robinson still does the sessions on the grass and does the team talks. I'm a sounding board is his general role. But he does say, I didn't realise just how much I missed being in the dugout. Talked about money being very tight at the club, getting, me being part of the coaching staff saves money, therefore it might help us get better gym gear or proper training facilities, etc. We had hoped to be in League One by now. Hopefully we'll get there soon. He said, interestingly, of Salford, eventually we want a Bilbao model, 5 or 6 young players from Salford playing for the club, but that's a while away yet. They're just trying to get their academy going. I think it's a Category 3 academy. So that was Giggs in advance of the game, talking to The Athletic, albeit keeping the controversies at arm's length. There is unbridled loyalty between Class of 92 and Giggs at every turn. I think wider football, it's still a very tricky way back from, is my sense. That said, the trial, and the way that everything just, the news cycle at the moment is just boom, 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 boom. The details of the trial already feel far away. So maybe somebody will take a chance on him. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting you saying about the director of football role. That I didn't know that. I learned until I read the article that he's director of football.
Since last year. The Guardian had a piece last year, in effect, saying it seems like Ryan Giggs has been director of football since the start of that season. So the previous August. But there was no big announcement. And
I know all those guys are successful and they come with the territory of the club. But if anybody else with Giggs' profile was suddenly appointed director of football at a club like that, it's big news. If Craig Bellamy, the current Wales manager, a former Wales manager is going to be the director of football down in Salford, that's massive, and that just sort of went under the net.
Well, I think there's a very deliberate sneaking in, as opposed to an announcement.
Yeah, I'd say so. And I think The Athletic even tried in a different way to get Ryan Giggs to talk a bit more. I think he said something about the Hall of Fame what you're talking about there, and they went around it that way. Like, do you think it's weird that you haven't been?
Yeah, why do you think that might be?
Yeah, and he said something like, "Oh well, when I was playing football, I never looked back, never looked forward," or something like that. He just answered that a different way.
There's a lot of not looking back, not looking forward.
Yeah.
I'm in the moment.
Here
Answers.
now. Yeah.
And what's he going to say? What can he say?
I don't know.
Where do you go with it?
The only thing I was thinking, we said about saving money on coaches. It's like, well, the manager's probably getting paid most, and you're an experienced manager now at this stage. Maybe you could step in. Now, Carl Robinson seems to be very liked, and I remember the BBC Sounds documentary that Carl Robinson was in. He was very good in that.
Yeah. Peter Lim, by the way, if you're interested in that whole Salford situation, has stepped away from the club. So I think the class of '92 have taken his shares in the last year or so. Where do you think Giggs is, Ronan?
I don't know. The Hall of Fame point is interesting because the criteria for that is somewhat bizarre in that John Terry's in there and he had a criminal court case, found not guilty regarding racism in the Anton Ferdinand situation, and he did get a charge by the Football Association. They've charged him on that basis. So even though, and similarly Giggs, there's no criminal conviction there. So the John Terry thing was greenlit, welcome in, here's your robe. And Ryan Giggs is like, not welcome at the inn. So I just, like anything, the criteria, they've set it out in a certain way. And I'm just, the lines are often blurred, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll see where Giggs goes. I don't get the impression his door's beaten down with offers to manage from any club in English football at the moment. Just to mention before we talk to Gary Breen, Real Madrid 2, Barcelona 5. The Spanish Super Cup, naturally enough, was on in Saudi Arabia last night. Wasn't on TV, but it was an extraordinary game. Mbappe opened the scoring with a brilliant goal. Lamine Yamal, brilliant goal. Lewandowski, free kick. Rafinha with 2 goals. Again, brilliant quality of goals. This is the 4th game in a row where Madrid have conceded 4 goals or more to Barcelona. They're wild affairs. Ancelotti said, I don't know what's going on with Clásicos just now. 35 goals in the last 10 meetings. So that was last night, Barcelona beating Real Madrid. We will turn to Gary Breen. Now, 6 weeks on from Arsenal's 2-0 win in the league, far less straightforward for them yesterday. They have been dumped out of the FA Cup third round for the 3rd time in 4 years. Bit of a habit, this. The 9th time Manchester United have knocked them out of the FA Cup more than anybody else. Happy to say Gary Breen is with us. Gary, welcome.
Hey, mate, you're right.
Very well. Arsenal 70% possession. They had 25 attempts to Manchester United's 7. Is Arteta within his rights to say this was a 1 in 1,000 type loss?
He can argue in terms of being dominant in the build-up, but ultimately you're judged on putting the ball in the back of the net. And it's been a problem. We mentioned it, Joe, a few weeks ago in terms of even when they're in good form, that the over-reliance on set pieces, the fact that they're not able to open teams up in open play. And it just came to a head yesterday in terms of how resilient United were. And they showed all the characteristics that they've been so critical of, that they've been lacking. And they really dug in and got the result, got to the penalties and ended up going through. But from an Arsenal perspective, that old criticism aimed at Arteta will be that he doesn't have an out-and-out goal scorer, that killer at the point of their attack to make those dominant displays count. And that will be something that will be ongoing, even if we're in the January window. There's a lot of talk of him maybe addressing it now. I don't think you'll get the quality of player required to do that. But it definitely is a problem. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. From general play, as opposed to set pieces, their high point under Arteta was 1.8 goals per game. That's dropped to 1.3 this season, which is a big drop, half a goal per game down. So is it as simple as Saka injury, Odegaard injury for much of the season, no marquee striker, therefore Arteta's been written off, but possibly harshly? I mean, would you still be very much pro Arteta? He's done a very good job. This is just a personnel issue up top.
I acknowledge what a brilliant job he has done in terms of totally changing the mood around the club. But then with that and the success that Arsenal have had over the last couple of seasons, challenging for the title, is that kind of hope that they can win it changed to being expected to win it, especially with what's happened with Manchester City. the injury to Rodri, key player, he goes out. It felt like it opened up the door for Arsenal. But then on their shoulder, on their blind side, Liverpool come out of nowhere. So the pressure has really ramped up. And the problem for Arsenal is that they're not really responding particularly well to it. We saw those sending off earlier in the season. They have had their injuries. And that was something that was always going to happen to Arsenal, because you're never going to be able to keep 8 players, key players, fit all at the same time for the whole season in the way that they did last year. And now suddenly those key performers have come out of the team, and it has made them look very one-dimensional, very functional team, as opposed to that creativity that the likes of Saka gives you. And the knock-on effect of him not being there, and also the injury to Odegaard, is that those two on that right-hand side just elevated this team. And now that's gone, and Odegaard's really struggling. People ain't really mentioned this so much, is that when he came back from that injury, it was great to have him there. There's that creativity in that 10 area, and he's the leader. But all his final passes and everything he's trying to do is just not working at the moment. He has not got his range back. And as a result of that, you then see him going deep to try and get the ball for the defenders, to try and dictate play there. And it has a really negative knock-on effect. The likes of Rice then gets pushed up further up the pitch. He's not as influential. And they're really struggling. They're just that kind of spark that they had when everyone's fit and how difficult they are to play against, coupled with the threat they are at set pieces. It all looked like it was the perfect scenario to go on and really finally get that Premier League title. But it seems like they're just going further and further away from it now, and there's real problems to be addressed, there's no doubt.
Yeah. It's not a perfect poll, obviously, but for the first time in what feels like about 10 years, Arsenal fan TV is back in my world again. It's popping up on my phone in different places. Yeah. And it's definitely the ire has turned to Arteta. He's holding us back. He won't let us play. That all feels very harsh to me. I mean, I think this might just be a difficult period for him that he has to weather, and personnel will transform things. Or do you hold Arteta as culpable for this situation?
Well, no, but he will be accused of it. And even people who don't really, like you talk about Arsenal TV, probably they're at every game. They know everything that's happening at the club. And there is a suggestion that Arteta, for that kind of defensive-minded squad that he's built, and that the priority was made on like adding to what was a really well-drilled functioning defensive unit last year, bringing in like Calafiori, the fact that Timber's back as well, Marino comes into midfield. These are all in keeping with that type of physical stature of a team that Arsenal and Arteta is trying to build. The Arsenal fans will literally be saying to him now, come on, just let this team off the leash a little bit. But they don't play like that. Arsenal do not play off the cuff. It's very coached by design, where a player goes into one position, the next one goes further up the pitch. And once the Premier League gets an idea of how they do try to open you up, it learns very quickly. And I think they're struggling now that in those key moments where they're looking for that real quality at the top end of the pitch, it's just been lacking. Yeah. Now, even in that Newcastle game in the League Cup defeat, Arsenal could have scored 3 goals from set pieces, and then suddenly the whole complexion changes. But it wouldn't be no difference in terms of what's happening and how I said to you before, Joe, that the kind of reliance on set pieces has kind of papered over the cracks in terms of how difficult they're finding to open up teams. And of course, there were big moments there for Havertz in terms of the opportunities that he had, which would have changed the complexion. Odegaard misses the penalty. So it's just something it's kind of like the perfect storm now, where they've got the injuries, they've gone out of the cups, or where they look like they're going to go out of the League Cup. So the priority then goes on to the Champions League. And of course, that can go anywhere when you get deep into competitions, which Arsenal are not particularly good at doing, as much as everyone talks about being an elite level team. They don't really go past the last 16 or the last 8 and haven't done throughout, even when they've had the great teams of Amorim and those type of guys. So the pressure will be building. And a lot of people from the outside, I had this argument with Shay Given on Premier Sports, where he was saying, well, if Arteta doesn't win a trophy this year, and he looked at me and I was like, well, finish what you were saying. And I asked him then, what you're saying, he should be sacked. That's so incredible, isn't it, to think of the job that he's done, that now they're so close. And because it's been kind of undone by the injuries and the suspensions, suddenly he's going to lose his job. I don't really buy into that.
Yeah, you see, I don't either. I think he should have more credit in the bank. It's amazing how quickly it's turned.
Yeah. But he's not that much of an endearing character, though, either, is he, Joe, as well? Even from me, as an Arsenal fan, as his perspective, when he comes out with things, you do think, oh God, you've got a bit of David Brent about you in terms of coming out of all these type of the dog being named Win and all these type of pickpockets and all these different scenarios that may well be productive in terms of what he's trying to achieve. But I'm not sure we need to always hear about it. And of course, he talks about the balls being too light, and that's why they lost to Newcastle. And then he talks about in any other 1,000 games, Arsenal win that yesterday. They're just things that you think you open yourself up to criticism.
Yeah, he's not endearing. There's no doubt.
No, he's not endearing.
And that's probably an aspect to this. Because I even remember back in October when they lost to Bournemouth and they went down to 10 men early and they lost 2-0.
Yeah.
I was really struck that he, in his press conference afterwards, he said, well, once we went down to 10 men, it's an impossible task. I thought,
yeah,
really? Like,
it's not. And you think about Arsenal over the years under Wenger, how many games they used to win with 10 men. Listen, you kind of don't want to encourage getting your players sent off as such. But even in that game, Joe, there's a key moment. And this is the problem. There's so much kind of emphasis placed on Havertz at the point of their attack. But people like Martinelli, in that Bournemouth game, he's clean through. He's 1v1 with the goalkeeper. He doesn't score. And then Bournemouth go on to win the game. He was clean through against Newcastle. He doesn't score. And these are the differences, is that those type of guys in the wide areas, Martinelli, Trossard, don't score at a rate that, say, Saka does, or they're not as influential. And I know no one can really be as prolific as salaries for Liverpool, but if you want to win titles or you want to go deep in the Champions League, then those positions in those wide areas, you have to be putting up better numbers than these guys are.
Yeah. And I don't want to be too harsh on him either, because he's entitled to be a sore loser. They're all sore losers. I mean, the grey jerseys, Alex Ferguson 30 years ago, if Ferguson and United weren't just as ridiculously successful as they've been, that would go down as the all-timer. But, you know, and even after he said the ball was too light against Newcastle, that's the headline. That becomes the big thing. Yeah. To be fair to him, he followed it up with, we have to adjust, we have to do better, it's on us. But obviously, like, there's a certain naivety in mentioning the ball, because of course that's going to be the big headline. That's what people...
And he's so experienced, isn't he? This is not a guy who's just suddenly come into the Premier League. He's played in it. He understands it. He's been a number 2 at City. Now he's a number 1 for 5 years at Arsenal, which is an incredible job to get as your first job. But you would think that you need to be more a bit more clever than that in terms of just leaving yourself open for those criticisms.
Yeah.
And of course, as well, he said about when he was asked, listen, you've only won 1 trophy in 5 years. And he arrogantly said, no, 3, because he counted the Community Shields.
I know. And the sort of like case proven look on his face to the journalist, as if you didn't, you're actually wrong. Yeah, and all that stuff, I suppose, becomes an issue when you're not winning and becomes heightened in people's minds.
Of course it does.
Kai Havertz, we should talk about, though. He is the fall guy for yesterday. He missed 2 or 3 very good chances. The penalty, it was a reasonable save, to be fair. It was in the corner, but obviously there wasn't too much power on it. Like, is he endemic of the problem? Is he just not good enough?
Well, it depends in terms of, like, if you're saying that they want a killer number 9, he's not that. He's never claimed to be that. And even him coming from Chelsea raised so many eyebrows at Arsenal in terms of that's a big investment. But I think he's been a brilliant signing for Arsenal in terms of his the kind of attributes that he gives the squad. I think it's too hard on him. It doesn't get heightened as much when you have that attacking threat from Saka on the right-hand side, which really occupies the opposition. And then as a result, that creates space for Martinelli on the other side, Odegaard and those type of guys. Take him out of that Arsenal team and suddenly you don't have the one player that elevates them. They don't have that threat. And even the young Wanyeri, 17 years old, he provides that for Arsenal as well, that ability to drive inside. And he's injured as well. So they can and have looked very formulaic. I've said that before. They're one-dimensional Arsenal. And that's the frustration with Arsenal, but the supporters. But they're used to seeing these type of teams with George Graham. I know that will be a certain generation of supporter. But even the likes of Theo Walcott's on telly now in the punditry, and he's saying, oh, no, I think it should be more like playing off the cuff, the way we did under Wenger. And I'm thinking, you didn't win anything. I know they'll say about their FA Cups, but they were never challenging consistently from the league. And that's something that they're always fighting at Arsenal, is that there's so many of the lads or the supporters from the Wenger era where they want that kind of brilliant flicks round corners and stuff like that. But Arteta is just not that type of manager. And I think that it has to be a natural fit. And we see it so often in terms of what the supporters want. You know, they want a certain brand of football. That's something that's aimed at West Ham, and they've got a new manager in themselves. And of course, Tottenham with Ange. The manager has to reflect what those supporters want to see. And I think Arsenal normally are quite comfortable with it if they're winning games with set pieces or they're bullying teams. But suddenly when they're not winning games, those dissenting voices become louder.
Yeah, well, they're second in the league. They're 6 points off Liverpool. They do Liverpool have a game in hand. So you're within 9 points maybe. Oh, it's just so up and down with them because before that draw against Brighton, they had 3 wins in a row, and you thought they were finding something. But then before that, it was the draws against Everton and Fulham over Christmas, and that's 6 points dropped ultimately in 6 games. You mentioned Ange, so it's Spurs on Wednesday for Arsenal. One of those two managers is going to feel very, very bad on Thursday.
Well, they are, and I tell you what, there must have been moments there for Ange where he was feeling very bad. I was watching that game at Tamworth, and they had a couple of big chances just before the end of the game to cause an almighty upset. Yeah. And even looking at that performance for Tottenham, I know he threw on the big guns or such, but they had a strong team to start with. But the big guns come out and they see it out. But even from an FA Cup perspective, and I know like a lot of the bigger teams don't want the replays, but that just shows you what Tamworth deserved their replay and what was an incredible performance against Tottenham. They deserved that financial windfall of going back to the new Tottenham Stadium with their fans and what it could mean to them. So that's the only downside of it, is that they were robbed of that. But in terms of this North London derby, which has ultimately been one of the best viewing games you can see in recent seasons because of the jeopardy attached to it. They're one or the other is always chasing something. But now, as you quite rightly said, Joe, the pressure will be on massive for both managers.
Yeah. For people who didn't catch it, Spurs had to go to extra time to beat fifth tier National League Tamworth. Yeah, so 96 places between them. When you're going to a Tamworth and you've played Premier League football, what's the biggest obstacle when you're going up against fifth tier Tamworth and your Premier League team?
Just that the game kind of can go away from you. Ultimately, you want to start and really kind of flex your muscles, show your authority over them, but with every minute that passes, the fact that they would put maybe Premier League players that they've seen on telly on Match of the Day and all these football programs or whatever on a pedestal as such, and then suddenly they're playing for them, they'll be in awe of them in the first 15 minutes. That's the moment you've got to win the game. You've got to put it away from them. And so it just becomes an occasion as opposed to a competitive game. But if you don't do that, the confidence soon builds. And probably my biggest upset as a player was going with Premier League Sunderland to Brentford, who were League One at the time. And the exact what I just said happened, where they grew in confidence and we ended up losing 2-1. So it's incredible then, the flip side of that, and you can't comprehend it. But the reality wasn't for us, is that we were getting relegated and they were going to get promoted. So we're invariably going to be in the same league in the following season. But nevertheless, the headline is a Premier League team gets dumped by a League One team. It was interesting to see Brentford got a taste of their own medicine in terms of what they gave me in themselves. And in terms of the struggles that Plymouth have had, haven't been able to win an away game since April, bottom of the Championship, and they go to Brentford, who've been so strong in the Premier League, incredible in terms of how difficult it is at the G-Tech for any opposition. They were brilliant, beaten 1-0 comfortably. And then obviously then the criticism comes to Thomas Frank in terms of the team that he selects. So, sometimes in those scenarios, as a player and certainly as a coach, you're on a hide into nothing. You don't really win. You just got to get through the round.
Yeah, I always find it's more of an observational point, but it's amazing how more crowded the pitch looks when you're at these lower tier matches, and the camera's almost at pitch level. Because
you hear, Joe, every comment, right, when you're in them stadiums that you'd never hear when you're in a Premier League stadium, because there's just so many people. And I'd cod myself on that they weren't really giving me stick. I'd pretend it wasn't what they were aiming. But when you play at them games, you hear everything that the supporter says about it.
But it almost illustrates how little space there can be in a pitch. Whereas when you're watching a Premier League game and the camera's 40, 50, 60 feet in the air, it looks like there's loads of space when you're looking down. But down pitch level, you realise how much hustle and bustle is going on.
But also, when you say when you go pitch level, Joe, and you're watching a game really close to the pitch, you see just how big Premier League players are, just how athletic they are, how they're bordering Olympian athletes, in terms of what they do. Yeah. But it was interesting, even for that Tamworth game yesterday. I don't know how many listeners would have seen it, but obviously because it's so tight there, Tottenham had to have 12 chairs put alongside the dugout for all their support staff to sit alongside the pitch in just a kind of like a basic chair, wooden chair provided for them, for all their sports scientists, their technical guys, their video analysis. It was so funny to see. It was brilliant.
So Ruben Amorim was speaking after this game.
So good.
Yeah, the things that jumped out, he was asked, what is it about this game? And he said different spirit. We're improving on our spirit. Just you can see it. He said we're learning to calm down a game when required. When it's actually not going especially well for us, we're finding ways to calm the game down. And he said more aggressive on set pieces as well. So it kind of feels like certainly against these better teams that this the 3-4-3 ambition that I'm sure still has very subtly parked into more of a, well, look, we're a 5-4-1 out of possession type team, and that's just the way it's going to have to be in the short term.
Yeah, and I love seeing that because obviously he comes with a really rigid style of play, and I question. Even a lot of people were saying about, well, listen, he needs to get his own players in. But even when he does, even if he was able to pick whoever he wanted, I'm still not convinced that the way he played that system at Sporting can actually work in the Premier League in terms of how quickly the opposition in the Premier League get the ball forwards and would expose your kind of wing backs being out of position. You drag your centre backs into those wide fullback areas and really cause problems. But he is adjusting, and that's so good to see. And even because he is doing that, because they're negating the space in and around the pitch, and certainly in the defensive areas in the midfield, the way defenders and certainly the midfielders were getting exposed before, they're just not, because the likes of Ugarte can cover the ground now. Even Bruno can, because as much as people can criticise Bruno, he never shirks putting in a shift in terms of running around. He's just not particularly quick at doing it. But I thought they were incredible yesterday, United, in terms of the spirit that they showed, the determination that is so often been accused of being lacking in those players. And even listening afterwards to Bandier talking, the goalkeeper said, we love this manager. He's improving us. And Bruno, standing next to him, started laughing when he used those words like, we love him. But you can tell that they respect him. And that's more than I ever felt they did under Ten Hag in terms of, listen, the managers and you do whatever he says, but you've got to believe in what he's doing. And I know it's going to be a long road for Manchester United to get back to where they are, but it does feel like they're on the right road. That's the big thing for me. And I think they'll get there. I do. I think it will be a hard one, but you're seeing the likes of Maguire, a tight defensive unit, and he's doing well now. There's no coming away from it. And so many of the players are. And even yesterday, which was credit to them, but there was times where after the sending off, the likes of Garnacho was having to go into right wing back, and he just switched off. When Rice just ran inside him and got the free header, he should score. It's a brilliant save, but he should still score that header. And you're looking at them thinking, you don't even know how to defend, but at least you're getting back there. At least you're kind of congesting the area a little bit with the United shirts in around Arsenal, making it difficult. So I think looking at it, I think they can be very proud of it, United. I know it's not what United fans want in terms of attack, and it was a defensive rearguard action before the sending off, even more so after it. But nevertheless, I think to get where they want to be, you're going to have some of that defensive resilience that they showed yesterday in abundance.
The word, by the way, from Sky Sports this morning is that AC Milan are about to formally open talks for Rashford. I presume United are very much open for business on that one.
Yeah, I think that's probably why the players love him so much. And I think also why the supporters is that he's dealing with those situations that have just dragged on for too long. Players dictating, when they want to kind of like train or whatever the accusations are against Rashford and other players who are not producing, that he's just nipped it in the bud straight away. So if he has to move on, then so be it. But it sends out a message to the rest of the squad.
They say you should never go back. David Moyes is going back. 11 years, obviously, at Everton, was incredibly successful. He's 61 years of age now. On the you should never go back front, so I appreciate there is Jose at Chelsea and Kenny Dalglish Liverpool, Kevin Keegan Newcastle all mentioned. However, there are a huge number of examples where it works out beautifully. For instance, David Moyes himself at West Ham, better second time around. Harry Redknapp at Portsmouth, better second time around, won the FA Cup. Ancelotti at Real Madrid, bit of a wobble just now, I appreciate, but Champions League, La Liga double. And then Roy Hodgson, it sort of just worked both times at Crystal Palace. He had, weirdly, the exact same winning percent, 32.4%, exact same winning percentage both times. So I guess in David Moyes' pro camp, he's got some examples there. He's not going back to a good situation, though. Only in 3 previous years have Everton scored fewer goals this far into a season. Only Southampton have fewer shots. So it's not like XG is beating them and they're unlucky. They're actually scoring what they should score. If he was replacing, like, I don't know, a Russell Martin type, and you'd say, okay, let's get back to first principles and basics, and you'd associate that with Moyes. A slight concern would be he's replacing Sean Dyche. I'd say Dyche is running a tight enough ship there to begin with. So it's not like you're kind of going in and saying, right, well, there's a lot of easy wins here in terms of our fitness or our attitude. I'd kind of think, God, this is going to be interesting now.
Timing is everything in football, and for him to go back now, and he was quite vocal, David Moyes, and he has been bullish even since he went back to West Ham for that second time. He went into West Ham saying, well, listen, I'm a winner, and he said, this is the way it is. And I'm thinking, well, no, you weren't particularly a winner at Sunderland, and you certainly weren't a winner in Spain as such. But he's more bullish, and I think he's probably stepped back and think, I need to be that type of guy, more personality, show a bit more of that kind of fighting spirit that he obviously shows when he's coaching the players. But I think it's a really good fit. I think you're right. I think he's going into Everton where the bar is so low at the moment. He's going to improve them, and he's got a team that wants to defend, knows how to defend, and he's just got to provide that extra bit of quality. And I think when you go to a club, ultimately your kind of reaction from the supporters will be based on, like you said there, Joe, how it's been before. Like they're not. He's not replacing a hero. At Everton, True. They were sick of Sean Dyche at this stage, and they'll be delighted to get him back. So I don't really buy into that. Don't go back. I think it's a great opportunity for him, and of course, it feels like every season for the last 4 seasons or so, it's about just stay in the Premier League for Everton. The new stadium's being built, but this is the perfect one for him where they just have to stay in there. If he does that, and he opens up the new season in that incredible new stadium in the Premier League, then what a job that is.
True. Strange kind of career, Moyes, isn't it? Like, so good that 02 to 13 period, and then he is just, it's unfair, but he is forever the post-Ferguson manager, and then, tricky couple of years. West Ham winning that Conference League was a real moment for him. Do you regard him as really good, top-tier Premier League manager, love what he's about?
I definitely agree with what you said there in terms of, I do think he's a top Premier League manager in terms of, I'm not saying about chasing titles and stuff like that, because even at Everton, as good as he was, never qualified for the Champions League. People say, no, they did one season, but they didn't get past the qualifying round. They were knocked out straight away. So that did that. I thought the job that he'd done at West Ham was brilliant. I genuinely did 2 top 7 finishes. Won that Europa Conference, but got to the semi-finals of the Europa League the season before as well, in a really tough season. So there was a period there. So I thought he was excellent, and everyone then kind of accuses West Ham fans, saying, "Well, listen, be careful what you wish for because you wanted him out." But that doesn't even stack up, that argument, because West Ham fans never wished for Lopetegui. That's certainly what they didn't wish for. But there's something that is always the case at West Ham, and it won't be this at Everton, but at West Ham, and I believe in this, supporters have a way of playing that is synonymous with them and what they want to see. And at times it did feel a little bit restricted for West Ham, and people would say, well, listen, you're winning games. But I try and remember now, even as a grizzly old player, is that football is an entertainment business. I love defending when it's done brilliantly, but I'm not going to go and watch a team week in, week out that just gets everyone behind the ball and looks to nick a 1-0. I wouldn't be paying any money to go and see that. So you've got to be mindful of it. But I think at Everton, I think that will be a good home for him because they like hard-working teams. It's something that they're about. They want to see teams working their socks off, putting tackles in, and he'll give them that. I have no doubt. I think it'll be a good fit.
Yeah. Did you not feel Dyche was doing all that already? Like all those exact things you mentioned there, I would think, well, that's a Sean Dyche team.
Yeah, but they couldn't cope anymore, Everton, with the fact that they just don't score goals.
No.
And they don't even look like they're trying to score goals. And it wouldn't even be a case, a lot of Everton fans, and certainly when I've seen it, it was a case of like staying in the game against the better teams. And that's fine, that type of tactic. But even then against the lesser teams and teams down the bottom, they play exactly the same way to try and get just one goal. And you're just thinking, you can't be watching it. It's an entertainment business now, football. And you can't be signing up for that.
Okay, fair point. That was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe. Take care, mate.
There we are. That was Gary Breen, who, by the way, even Arsenal fan Gary Breen says, I can concede Mikel Arteta may not be endearing character. That may be an issue. So, fellas, that is football done for today. We will be talking rugby later on this afternoon. An amazing game in La Rochelle yesterday, so we'll get into that with Keane Tracy and Dean Madigan. The rest of the week, anything we want to mention? Or do we? You like to keep it all secret, Ronan?
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Oh, hang on. You asked me to put a target on my job.
How's that going?
It's going great. Let's ask Ronan.
Sorry, somebody. Well, this came up with when you weren't in the office the other day.
Oh, did it? Did it ever?
Yeah. So we have started an Indo Sport YouTube channel just for Indo Sport stuff. Obviously, you'll still find this on the Irish Independent YouTube channel.
Somebody said what? Come on.
But hang on, let me just get but we've now, there's an Indo Sport one. We'll still be on both, but if you just want us, let's try and build it up. And I sort of said to you, by end of year, how many subscribers will we have in that? And you said 1,000. A colleague of ours.
Senior colleague.
Who was senior colleague? Who was it again?
Shall remain nameless.
How senior? Is it so senior that I should worry about this? Sorry, what did they say first?
I'm trying to remember who they were.
Do you want me to just say?
Oh, sorry. I just heard it in my ears. Yes, I remember. Senior.
Okay.
Big time.
Big time. Came over and said, by the way, Colin Doherty targeting 1,000 YouTube subscribers in a year for our channel. I mean, was the direct quote, he should get the sack?
I think you weren't in the office, and I think the assumption was you had already been let go.
Well, this was Joe starting this. He said you should be sacked. You should be out the door if you don't get 1,000. Now, let's go back on record. What I did say was I'd love to get to 1,000. I didn't say it'd stop. I didn't say...
You have to get to 1,000 with a view to getting further.
If we had 80,000 by the end of the year, I would still be happy.
Whoa. Is that what you're saying?
If we had... I would still be very happy that we broke the 1,000 mark.
You just want 4 figures. Yeah. So, sorry, you were going to ask him for targets?
Oh, yes, sorry. Brilliant. That is masterful there from Ronan, just to sort of deflect this away and back onto me.
Yeah. But I just remember we all gave you a good going over behind your back in the office the other day.
So I wanted the live production meeting.
No, my target was to keep this outro nice and short.
Sorry, it was. We've some good stuff this week.
Oh yeah, big time. Always.
That really clears it up.
Someone in the office did tell me that Ronan's outros were...
We actually do have some very good stuff this week. Right, okay, you're saying you should stop talking. Rugby on the way and some really, really good stuff later on in the week.